Good morning and happy Monday, and thanks for joining our coverage of the arrival of SpaceX's Dragon on its 20th commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station. We're live with a view just outside the Harmony module of the space station where Dragon is currently positioned, and we expect to see it berthed to the station very soon. Dragon's capture time this morning was at 5:25 a.m. Central Time as the station was flying 262 statute miles above the Northeast Pacific, northwest of Vancouver, British Columbia. When the vehicle was about 10 to 12 meters away from the space station, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir used the Canadarm2, which we see now attached to Dragon, to reach out and grapple the spacecraft before turning the controls back over to teams here in Mission Control Houston. Robotics officers are now using the Canadarm2 to reposition the spacecraft, make the alignments necessary, and will be ready to berth it to the station's Harmony module, where it will stay for the next month. There are two stages of capture or of berthing today for Dragon, the first being 4 latches which are actually already driving into the vehicle. To us, Dragon will look like it's attached to the station once those have been secured, but berthing itself will be confirmed after an additional 16 bolts have created an even more firm hold on the vehicle. As you can see, things moving smoothly this morning and well ahead of schedule. First stage capture has been complete. Those latches are driven into the Dragon spacecraft. Next up, those bolts will begin driving. You'll hear them referred to as A-bolts. That stands for acquired bolts, and that will conclude today's operations once all 16 have created a firm hold on the vehicle to the station's Harmony module. There's currently no exercise allowed on the station to avoid any vibrations in the station's Canadarm2 and keep the vehicle aligned.
Situational awareness. We are on board from exit 305 and port camera. And if you have a chance, if you could remove the cover on the port camera, that would be great. Copy. Also, Drew, no response required. We got a crew note on the timeline, and both numbers on the barcodes are correct. Thank you very much.
Today, Dragon is loaded with over 4,300 pounds of supplies, equipment, experiments, and more. And upon its arrival, it makes the 4th vehicle parked at the space station. I'm NASA's Leah Cheshire, and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where all of the team members you see here are constantly monitoring all of the station's systems, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Current flight director is Rebecca Wingfield, leading all of the teams on the ground. The visiting vehicle officer this morning is David Harshman, who's keeping tabs on the spacecraft and discussing its status with the team in the room, and the flight controller on the robotics console, currently in control of the Canadarm2, also known as Robo, is David Gruntz. The current crew aboard the International Space Station consists of NASA astronauts Andrew Morgan and Jessica Meir, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Skripochka, who is currently the commander of the International Space Station. All three are scheduled to return home next month, but not before we send up a new crew. And Andrew Morgan will have completed a 9-month stay at that point on the International Space Station. In this view, you can see the sunrise coming up just behind Dragon as the space station flies 264 statute miles over West Montana. And with those bolts driving, second stage capture is currently in progress. Dragon is currently outside of the station's Harmony module, completing its 20th commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station. This is the third flight to the station for the specific capsule that is berthing today. For future flights of the Dragon, it will look a little bit different, modeled after the commercial crew Dragon that we will start seeing flying humans to the space station later this year. The solar arrays that you see outside of Dragon right now currently give it about 54-foot wingspan, and those panels will actually be placed on the trunk of Dragon instead.
You have a station on 2 for CO2 valve unit.
Andrew, go ahead.
I mean, the procedure implies that there's AAA batteries already staged with this, but I didn't find any, so I'm just going to go grab some from the pantry.
Andrew, thank you very much. That's very helpful. We concur with the plan.
Dragon and the International Space Station are now crossing the terminator line, the difference between day and night, as the space station orbits the Earth every 90 minutes at about 17,500 miles per hour. Things are progressing for Dragon, and though we won't see it move anymore, those A-bolts are continuing to drive into the vehicle. Once Dragon is attached, there are 2 hatches the crew will need to open to access its contents. The first is a hatch on the station side, and there's also a hatch on Dragon itself. After it is successfully attached today, the crew will begin outfitting the space between the station and Dragon. It's known as the vestibule, and prepare for opening the hatch. The vestibule will need to be pressurized before either hatch can be opened. Currently, the crew is scheduled to do that vestibule outfitting later this afternoon, and then they'll access the contents of Dragon tomorrow morning. As we mentioned, Dragon is bringing 4,300 pounds of supplies with it today, 602 pounds of that being crew supplies, including some fresh food as a treat for the astronauts, things like grapefruit, oranges, apples, and even some fresh garlic. As we mentioned, this is the 20th mission for Dragon for commercial resupply to the International Space Station. That marks the end of the commercial resupply services 1 contract. They'll then be moving on to CRS-2. We mentioned that the vehicle will look a little bit different, as well as the flight will. Rather than being grappled by the Canadarm2 and then berthed to the space station as we've seen today, future Dragon resupply craft will dock automatically to the space station.
Affirm.
Thank you.
And we have confirmation of the 16A bolts or acquired bolts complete.
Sensation on 2 for lead check props.
Go ahead on 2.
Yeah, Adam, I have multimeter Kepler.
Kepler is good.
Copy.
While soaring 262 statute miles over Puerto Rico at 7:18 a.m. Central Time this morning, the A bolts completed driving into Dragon and is successfully installed to the space station's Harmony module. SpaceX's 20th commercial resupply mission began on March 6th when SpaceX's Dragon launched to the International Space Station at 10:50 p.m. Central Time. After a 2-day journey, it was captured this morning by NASA astronaut Jessica Meir using the Canadarm2 at 5:25 a.m. Central Time while flying 262 statute miles over the Northeast Pacific. Next up for Dragon, it will remain attached until April before departing for Earth and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Baja California, bringing with it about 3,700 pounds of completed science experiments and other equipment. With this being the final flight of the CRS-1 contract for SpaceX, that results in 20 total Dragon missions to the International Space Station, providing over 94,000 pounds of resupply and 74,000 pounds of return mass. The crew is scheduled to access the contents of Dragon tomorrow. This is the third time this specific Dragon spacecraft has made its way to the International Space Station. With all of Dragon's operations completed, it now being successfully attached to the Harmony module on the space station, we're going to sign off for today. Thanks for joining us. This is Mission Control Houston.